the single arm kettlebell jerk. Now this is an exercise that a lot of people struggle with initially, and the main reason why is because the movement has got to go into a thing known as the motor cortex. So it's a little bit like when we learn how to drive. Initially we don't know how to operate all these pedals and controls, we don't know where the clutch is, we don't know where the gear stick is, and after a while, after you've done so many repetitions, you know where the gear stick is, you know which way to use the pedals correctly, and then as you practice it, your body can actually do it instinctively without actually having to think about it. So it's the same principle as basically walking or riding a bike. Once it's gone into the motor cortex, you know how to do it. How do you get it in there? That's the next question. So we all know how to jump. So the jerk basically maps exactly the same movement that we use for jumping. Yeah, so we start with a small bend at the knee. If you want to jump straight up, we jump straight up and we land with our knees bent to absorb the jump. So the thing with the kettlebell jerk, what you're trying to train is you're trying to train the weight to be sent up by your legs, and then the idea is we then want to lower underneath it. Or another way you can think about it is you just do a jump and you land with your hand in the air. So if you start there and you jump, and then you stand up. But the thing is, in order to get it into the motor cortex, you've got to do this about 300 times for it to finally really actually sink in. But basically say if you practice this a lot, so you're basically just doing a jump and you've got to land with your hand in the air. But the thing is, don't try and think about it while you're doing it, because if you're trying to get something in the motor cortex, you can't be doing it with conscious thought. So you just basically have to jump and land with your hand in the air. It's as simple as that. But it will take a bit of practice, but the main thing is don't overthink it. If you overthink it, it will go horribly wrong. So principally, we've learned the push press. So the push press starts in the same way. So if you want to try and do it slowly, you push up onto the balls of your feet and then you drop down. Okay, so there's two ways that we can get things into the motor cortex. We can either practice something at full speed, or we can try and slow it down. So you think about it in slow motion, what we're trying to do is start with the knees bent, and then we drive up, we push up until we're at full extension, then we let the heels come back down again. So that's your slow motion version of it. So what you could do is you could practice exactly that. So you just practice a push press and then you just try and lower underneath it. So again, knees bent, drive up, do a push press and land with the heels down. So if you're doing that version, so you don't get too tired, I would practice maybe about 2 or 3 reps, have a break, and then try and do it again. And then say in between, you could practice doing the other version, just doing the jump and landing with your hand in the air. And you probably find that it will start to sink in because you've practiced the movement slowly, which is exactly the same principle as Tai Chi. So the idea of the Tai Chi, the movements are practiced slowly, so you've done enough repetitions, then when you speed up, you know how to do it because your body's already done the movement. So, again, in terms of when you actually do your 4-speed jerk, the idea is, again, we start with the knees bent, core engaged, drive up and drop. Now at this point here, you want to be thinking about having your tummy pulled in and your pelvic floor engaged. You squeeze your bum, you stand up. And then when you let your arm come back down again, the idea is just let your arm drop, but use your legs to absorb it. So it's just basically a small bend at the knee as you catch. So again, in terms of the breathing, that's the other thing to think about. When you send it up, you want to try and keep that thoracic spine extended. So you have a sharp breath in to try and open up your chest as you drive it up. So a small bend in the knee. Have another breath, make sure you keep that strength. And then again, as it comes back down again, you can breathe out. So here we go. But you suck in as you breathe out so you don't collapse in your back. Right, so have a practice, don't get frustrated, but I mean the main thing is to try and practice the movement. If you do nothing else, just practice that. It's very simple, and once you've done it a number of times, as long as you don't overthink it, it will just sink in there and then it will become quite normal. But if not, just make sure when you practice your push presses, that when you do your push presses, make sure your heels come up and then they land back down again. And before you know it, you'll be doing this exercise with no problems whatsoever.